Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Backyard Peace Project. It's really great to have you here. And we come on a Wednesday. We have interesting, deep, sometimes uncomfortable conversations about issues in the world right now. We think it's important, especially when we're expressing different viewpoints, to have a respectful conversation and hear all sides, especially during cancel culture that we've got at the moment. So it's really important to have these conversations and look for ways to build bridges between us rather than, build walls. So it's really, really important. So today, my lovely crew, what's been coming up for me is, who do you think you are? That's what I want to discuss today. Who do you think you are? And I think it's a combination of when you make decisions to step into your next chapter of evolution or your next chapter of growth, or you put yourself out there and do something big and it's scary and it makes other people feel uncomfortable. And it's like, who do you think you are doing this? Girls from the village, like I'm from a village, girls from the village don't do that. Like, kind of do, and all that sort of thing, other people's expectations. And also, it's about, who do you think you are, because who am I now? And I've been rumbling with this on and off because my life is changing so rapidly. um I do have to stop sometimes and think, who do I think I am now? Who am I now? What do I like? What do I not like? What am I willing to tolerate? What am I not willing to tolerate? And sometimes I think as well, which I've been contemplating a lot lately, when you've been through a period, probably during your younger years, of massive people pleasing, right? Where you're just like really accommodating to everybody around you, often to your own often to your own detriment. Maybe it's causing you to feel low and depressed and anxious because you're not living the fullest true appreciation of yourself that you could possibly do. And you go through that, and then sometimes you can come through that and think, I just can't do this anymore. Like, I've got no more energy to carry everybody else's expectations. I'm just not up for it. Not only I can't do it, I don't want to do it. And then the pendulum can kind of swing the other way, right? And you're like, I'm not tolerating anything. Nobody mess with me. And so you can kind of have these swings of who you are. And I was sort of thinking the other day, there's definitely parts of me that have hardened since I emigrated. 100%. Like, the softness that I had when I was in England, surrounded by my original gang, where I lived forever, family, friends, support network. And I moved to a country where really we were on our own, with three young children, and then had another two, with no family support. And them being neurodiverse added that other layer of complexity. I mean, I look back now, guys, and I'm like, I'm not sure how I did it. Like, I'm not sure how I survived that time, because it was very isolating. The kids are amazing. Like, you guys know how proud I am of my children. But when they were little and they were dealing with the complexity of ASD, it was full on. And Ian hasn't been home much over the last 12 years. So it was really difficult. And I definitely can see how, in having to advocate for my children massively, I've been to the Human Rights Commission in defense of my children. I've been to the Department of Education over the years, and having to advocate for all of these kids with all of their needs, it hardened me and it sharpened me. And you sort of reflect and think, how are those pieces serving me? Because they do, for sure. Like, when you need to kick some ass, you can. Do you know what I mean? You can go up, even if you go home and cry, you can be in that meeting with those people and kick some ass and represent your family, right? But then you sort of think, okay, that those chapters are finished now. The kids are so much older, and not that I don't advocate for them anymore, but I do. But like, two of them are adults now, so I can support them as they advocate for themselves, but I don't have to fight the battles anymore, you sort of thing. But you sort of self-reflect and you think, have I still got some of that sharpness and some of that hardness that I needed for survival, and I needed to help my family to thrive? But do I need it anymore? And which parts do I need and which parts do I let go? And Do you know what I mean? Because I thought we don't have to be this way forever. Like you can put some things down, you can soften down again because that chapter is over and everybody's okay and you're not in survival. So I'm just like this whole concept of who do you think you are? Number one, other people projecting onto us who they want us to be because it's more comfortable. And number two, our constant evolution of self. Like, are we giving ourselves permission to evolve out of some of those things into some of those things? I just thought it was so interesting.
Just another light topic for Wednesday morning.
You're all welcome. You're so welcome.
Sprinkle. Angie, do you want to go or do you want me to? I'm happy
You
to,
can,
whatever.
you can. Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Mm. I love this topic. I absolutely love it because those questions that, when written down, can be literally read in any tonality. Who do you think you are? You know,
Yeah.
it can be so inspirational to ask ourselves that, or it can be absolute sassy attitude. Who do you think you are? You know,
Yeah.
or in fear. Who do you think you are to do that? You know, like there's so many tonalities that can come with a question. And that's why I find it's the most beautiful, most loaded question. And I often feel that when we get into a situation where there is maybe either a little bit of fear or shedding, stepping up, and this question comes up. And this question often comes up for me when I up level, either, you know, bigger clients or, um, you know, the next step in business or even in relationships or in parenting, you know, perfect topic. I know that you can very much relate to that, Cathy. It is the question of, who do I think I am to be able to do that, to be able to deserve that, to be able to help people heal, hold space for them, whatever, you know, fill in the blanks. And I find it is the perfect question to ask ourselves. And not just ask ourselves, but really open that door and allow ourselves to sit with that and find that answer for us. We don't owe the answer to anybody else but us, you know, and to sit in that and go like, okay, who do I think I am to be chosen to be part of this amazing circle, to be chosen as you know, the coach for my next client, to be chosen as the parent for my two beautiful teenage boys that sometimes drive me absolutely bonkers. There is it's such a loaded question. And what came up for me when you shared, Cathy, about the hardening when moving to Australia, when moving away, my vision that came up for me, the image that I had in my head was instant armor, you know, that
Mm-hmm.
it's the protection that we find or feel necessary at first until we have tested the waters, until we have made the connections, until we have come through the other end of a huge challenge to realize how much was or wasn't it actually necessary to hold that armor and to wear that armor that can sometimes feel really heavy. So I feel when I go into protection mode, mama bear mode, or even into self protection, there is definitely that hardening that I very much understand what you're talking about. And I too ask myself that question, when is it actually needed? You know, when am I allowed to go back into that softness? And with that, what stood out for me when that thought process was happening in my head while I'm walking along with your explanations was, after Rob died, there was a deep need for my divine masculine to come out and stand strong for those two boys, to protect them, to provide for them. And everything that I felt was needed so deeply was divine masculine. I had completely forgotten about and neglected the divine feminine within me, not even realizing how strong she was standing, because the nurturing, the holding space, the loving upon them was going stronger than ever. But I paid more attention to the divine masculine because that was the part that I wasn't used to. That was
Mm.
the part that Rob held in our family, the protecting, the providing. And I can only imagine that with Ian being away so often, that you would have probably been used to stepping into both roles whenever they were needed, and tap dancing between the two or holding both steady when needed. And for me, that was new. I was so used to Rob always protecting and providing for us that I stepped into it without thinking. I only realized that way later when I had done my fair share of healing and had the outside perspective to realize that that's what happened. And interestingly enough, I only realized that that's what happened, the dance between divine masculine and feminine, when I got into my first relationship after Rob. And that's when my divine feminine went like, woohoo, come out to shine and dance and let my hair down, literally. And that comes back to all the parts of us, and it ties in so nicely with the question, who do we think we are? There are so many parts to us that sometimes we play the role so naturally because we were born into it, and we've been having this role for such a long time that we forget to sometimes even question it, but mostly honor it. That's my tiny little contribution that I wanted to put on the table for this easy topic.
Thank you for saying the things that you said, articulating that both of you have had to lean into your divine masculine and your divine feminine at different points in your life. Helps that ring true to me too, right? Because whether you try to think that you're one or the other, everyone does have both of those, I think.
Yeah.
From the time that I was a young child, my brain was struggling, right? But I grew up emulating every bit of the divine masculine, and again to satisfy and to do for everybody else, and to please everyone else. I can flash back to a time, aircraft commander in my aircraft in hostile airspace, and my navigator says, over the radio, he didn't use boss, but boss, I think this is where we're at. And you wouldn't have wanted to be my navigator at that moment, and tell me that I think we're here. You better darn well tell me right exactly where we're at, right exactly at this point in space, because otherwise our night's not going to end good. I don't want to hear I think, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't have wanted to be that person. But yet the divine feminine in me, I think had I let the world know that then, maybe I and the world wouldn't have been ready for the divine feminine in me to be a success. And throughout my life, I've had no shortage, of success, horrible, painful sacrifice and loss, right? And so I have struggled for years with that question, Cathy. Who am I? Who am? And I think for years, since maybe 2018 or before, I don't know. That's when things certainly, were pretty rough. I don't think I wanted to know who I was. I wanted to escape who I was, who I thought I was, who I wanted to be, who I wasn't, who I was. It was a bad time, right? And all I needed to know was who I was. And that shouldn't be that hard of a question. And then over the years, or at least that's how I thought, it shouldn't be that hard of a question. Years and years of counseling, I still kind of was putting my life together and living a good life with all of the pieces and the parts that were before. And I'm trying to figure out what pieces, what parts of my life do I bring as part of me along my journey. And I get to this point where all of a sudden I think I'm realizing that I think I'm starting to know who I am. I think I'm starting to have the audacity to let the world know who I am, right? Sorry. And I think when I came to that realization, then I hit a wall. I hit a stuck point. And I started going backwards because I started to run away. I run away from who that was. And I think that as I've been building a successful life all over again, I've been running away from, who are you? Well, everybody knows you're Angie. Everybody knows that. You do this and you do that, and you volunteer and you help people, and you're active in a church after 6 different church doorsteps that have told you you're not welcome. The homeless shelter, that's my family, right? Everybody knows the things that I do. I volunteer in a friend's special needs preschool so I can keep that connection in me to the children who I loved and served for 20 years. People used to ask, Angie, how do you do that job? How do you somehow seem to connect? And I said, because I think that 6-year-old child with great special needs understands me and I understand that child. That certainly wasn't the person in that cockpit, who called out the navigator who wanted to parachute out of my airplane, right?
Yeah.
And so as those two parts of me started to come together, I've been learning even in the last couple of weeks. Part of how I've tried to succeed in a personal and in a cultural environment that's not sometimes very kind. And we know that. Cathy, you said we're in that, I think one of you said that we're in that kind of a race kind of mentality sometimes now in our culture. And it's a tragedy, right? And it's so true. But the thing that I've held true to is animus toward anyone who's going to do me harm. I don't know if that's...
I just lost you there, Angie. You were cutting off the thing that I was holding on to or holding out for, and then you cut off.
That I've held on to is that the only thing that I have put out into the world is respect and kindness. And I don't know if that's divine masculine or divine feminine or
that's
the values
human.
of my dad. That's just, it's human. It's human.
Yeah.
And so who am I? I am me. I'm not trying to get to be a CEO of a company. I'm not trying to be a commanding general in the military anymore. I'm not trying to be a mom. I'm trying to be me. And I can't run from that. And to bring the way I see my life full circle is I've kind of always wanted in my life, I've said before, to go into the ministry. Divine feminine, divine masculine, I don't know, but the time is now, right? That's what my young self wanted to be. And I promised my young self that if I ever had a chance in my life, when I was young, I never gave my young self a voice. Throughout my life, I thanked my young self over and over and over again for sticking with me and allowing me to be successful and to live through struggles and losses and victories. And do that so selflessly because I never really honored that young self. And so when I told my young self, someday, if I can ever honor what your dream was, then that's what I'll do. And I don't know if it's going to work out, but that's who I think I am, is I'm the person that is every single piece and part of me that has been throughout my life. I have my final interview tomorrow. It's pretty
Yay.
remarkable. Thank you. It's pretty remarkable. And no, it's a pretty, no, I don't say that like to praise me. It's a pretty tall ask for me, for someone, who is me. I'm not going to apologize. It's a pretty tall ask for someone, me, to go to a graduate program in divinity, to be a pastoral and chaplaincy person.
Yeah.
Based on who I am in a private, small Christian university. And I'm not trying to prove anything to anybody. I'm trying to serve people and serve my young self. But if people can see my example as, we don't have to erase anybody. We don't have to live in judgment of anybody. We don't have to judge someone for doing something that, why are you doing something that has hurt so many people? I don't see life that way. And I never have. And so I've completely bought into, a counselor a long time ago taught me about trauma integration. It's kind of a higher level of trauma integration, I think, than like compartmentalizing trauma as I understood it, right? There are no bad parts of me, but I can look back and try to see the good that even a bad moment in my life served a need I had at one point or another. And so instead of having shame or guilt or disappointment that something happened a certain way in my life at a certain time, for somehow, some way, if I look into that moment and find a reason that helped me survive or do something, then that's not a bad part. And so I bought into the book, there are no bad parts. And then a higher level than that is what he helped me understand was trauma integration. And that's who I am embracing now. I am wasting a piece of my life, is how I see it. I am wasting a piece of my life if I take any success that I've had, or any failure that I've had, or any struggle or loss that I've had, or any severe trauma that I've had, if I take any one of those moments and I don't find a way to integrate that moment in my life to help someone else, then I'm wasting that part of life that I've lived. When I was in college, I hope I'm not talking too much. When I was in college, I went home from the Air Force Academy because a lady who was one of my 3 life mentors in my life, Miss Mary, was dying. And my older sister and my brother and myself stood by her bedside. In those days, they didn't have hospice, but she would have been in hospice. And we loved Miss Mary. She was one of only 3 of my life heroes. We loved Miss Mary. And I was so angry at God. And I don't want to turn any way with, talk of religion or theology. But in my heart, I was so angry at God because Miss Mary lay in that bed dying, and she was crying because she felt as though maybe she did not live a good enough life and serve enough people to be entered into heaven, if there really was a heaven. And the anger that I had with God was I didn't walk away from God, but I was angry with him for her. Because how dare you let this lady, who's an angel walking among us, she's the salt of the best soul you've ever known, how dare you let her lay here and worry about that? Trauma integration. Now I know that Miss Mary was teaching us one more time, because she was a public school teacher, retired for probably 50 years before she passed away. Trauma integration was that she was teaching us one last time some of her favorite children, I think. And she was trying to teach us that no matter how good a person or servant you think you are, don't ever walk past someone who needs your help. If someone's raising their hand or lifting their hand and they need your help, give them the dignity of standing up on their own if that's what they want. But if they need a lift up and a help, then give them that lift up and that help. So now that becomes who I am now, right? All of those little lessons in my life. I know that my dad, and I know that Doc Gaines, and I know that Miss Mary live inside me. But who is Angie now? Angie is becoming the person that not only knows that there's a piece of them that's inside me, but now I'm a piece. Those pieces living inside me are now living in me. They're not just inside me, they're living in me. So that's where I'm at. Maybe there's more transformations, maybe there's more evolutions in more chapters. I don't know that. And it's not in my hands now. I've lived a lot of chapters. And I'm just going to wait and see how it plays out now.
I have the perfect title for your biography. The Audacity of Being Me.
Yeah, I think thank you for that, Angie, and thank you, Marie.
Thank you.
I think I resonated so much with what both of you said, and it's so interesting because as you were both speaking, what was coming up for me is, and you both articulated this, and Angie, I just want to say, be careful, darling, because you're important to us, so be safe on the road, because I just keep being a little bit anxious, thinking I hope she's going to be safe. So,
Yes,
make sure that you're okay.
I am, I promise.
Okay. When it was coming up and I was thinking all of the different pieces and all of the different parts and all of the different chapters and all of the different richness of who we are. And Angie, Marie and I have spoken extensively in the past as well about all of those things, that the hardest times have brought some of the greatest blessings, but it didn't mean they didn't hurt. And it doesn't mean we want to go through it again, but we can see how it all unfolds and all that sort of thing. And there was a few things that came up for me. Number one, when we were talking about the divine masculine and feminine, and I feel like we are all both. We are all both, and it all shows up in different times. And I'm going to tell you something. And Angie, just be careful because I probably make you laugh.
Okay.
But I was on Paul, one of our ambassadors in America. He's fantastic. He runs a podcast called Relate Great, and he's a marriage and relationship counselor. And I was on his podcast and we were having this in-depth conversation. We were talking about the masculine and the feminine within a relationship. And I was saying, Ian and I, my husband and I, we've been together, it's 32 years this year. And we're pretty good. We're pretty cruisy, bearing in mind we don't live together mostly. So I think that's the way we get on really well. But one of the things, a little tip for marriage there, guys. One of the things was he came home because he's away 3 a week, so he's home 1 week. That's a big swing. Like it's a lot. It's a lot for both of us to hold, especially when the children were little. Not so bad now they're older. Like there's still challenges and there's still stuff going on, but it's not as physically demanding as it was when they were little. But one of the times recently, and I spoke about this on the Relate Great podcast, Ian had come home. It was the first day of him being home on his R&R. And we were in a hardware store, Angie. It's called Bunnings here, but it's a big hardware store. I think like it'll be Home Depot or something with you. I'm not sure what the big stores are called.
I love Bunnings.
Yeah, Bunnings. So it's all the DIY stuff. You can go in there and do all the stuff. And anyway, I went in and we both went in together. There's a few things we were doing around the house. And I wanted him to come and see something. So he's my husband, Angie, I'll have to send you a photo of him. He's a big, hairy, massive South African grumpy bloke. And, people look at us and go, how did you two get together? Well, I don't know. And it just works. But anyway, we were out and I wanted him to come and see something. So I called him and I said, hey, babe, come see this. And he was tired. Obviously, he's just finished a big swing and, he's a bit grumpy, and that's how we recognize him. And I said, I want you to see this. And he said, just tell me. But it was something I didn't want to shout across the store. I actually just wanted to quietly show him what I was looking at. It wasn't anything horrific, but I just, just didn't want to do it. And I said, just come here a sec, babe, because I just want to show you this. And he got really, really mad with me. Like, he really got mad and shut me down. Well, I don't respond well to that. So I will become extremely British.
Let me get the popcorn.
When that happens.
Yes. Good for you.
I become extremely British, and I pronounce all of my T's, and my voice goes very hoity-toity, and I will be ultra polite when I'm mad. And so anyway, I was like, I'm not engaging with this. I'm not doing it. And so I went off and I bought myself a coffee, and I said, would you like a coffee? And he said, no. I said, okay. So I went and got myself a coffee, and I sat down in the little coffee shop, and he said, aren't you going to bring that and come and look around? I said, no, thanks. I said, I'm okay here. No, thank you. I'm quite well in this coffee shop. And anyway, so we had this thing. And the interesting thing about that particular moment was, normally we can rumble and then we can clear the air and we can move on very quickly. That's one of the biggest assets of our marriage, because we've had a lot of complexity, a lot of challenge. And the fact that we can move through these things pretty quickly has been the saving grace on a lot of occasions. But this time we could not move past this moment. And I was trying to explain to him that his manner with me was very abrupt, and I didn't appreciate his manner. And he did not see how he had communicated me was abrupt. And so he was annoyed with me for making like a mountain out of a molehill. And we were at loggerheads, which very, very rarely happens. Like, seriously, and I just could not get through to him. And in the end, the only way I could describe it to him was, because I said, if a camera had been on you, Ian, and you had seen the way you spoke to me, you would understand why I reacted the way I reacted. But from your perspective, you didn't. You're tired. You're overworked, all of the things. I get it, but also it's not okay. And the only way we could meet was, I said to him, when you are away, I have to go into my masculine. I have to do all of the therapist meetings. I have to do the school meetings. I have to fight, go do the taxes, go here, go there, I have to defend the house. I have to look after the children. And I said, I have to go into my masculine, because I'm the defender of all things, right? There's only me. And so, Marie, you would relate to that 100%. And I said, but when you come home, I want to go back into my feminine, because you're home and I don't need to be the masculine. And I said, not only that, I said, being a traditional Pride and Prejudice girl at my heart, I said, I am almost like, great, he's home, he's here to protect me now. So not only do I not have to protect the whole family, he's here so I can soften, I can go into my feminine. And I said, when you respond to me like I'm one of the blokes at work, right? Because they've got a very harsh environment. The way they speak to each other is pretty bad, but that's their language there and all the rest of it. But I said, when you come home with that energy with me, it shuts me down, and I put my armor up, as you said, Marie, that armor. And it was only when he understood that I wanted to soften and allow him to be the protector that we were able to come together and talk through that moment on how he delivered it, how I received it, even though how I received it wasn't his intention when he delivered it, right? There was a mismatch. Yeah. Yes. So that's really interesting. And also, when you were talking, I was thinking about how we are made up of all of these stories and emotions and experiences and reactions and these parts of ourselves, of, as you said, Angie, all these chapters of my life and all of these different things. And I was thinking, do you know what we are? We're kaleidoscopes.
Love that.
I love that.
And the pieces are always there, but they're just shaken up in a different way, depending on what's in front of us, right? And so the pattern can be slightly different. And I just thought how beautiful that is, that even when we're going through, because my son said to me this week, my son's 16, nearly 17, And he said to me, he said, well, the problem is, mum, people are very intimidated by you. And I went, I am really nice, Noah. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then my husband said, he said, when you're out, Kath, he said, when you're out, are you approachable? And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, are you approachable? And I said, well, what do you mean by approachable? And he said, if someone looked at you from across the room, would they think that person, I could go to that person, she seems really lovely? And I went, probably not, because I'm always thinking. And I said, I've got resting bitch face when I'm happy. So if I'm concentrating, do you know what I mean? Probably people will go, holy shit, she's in a really bad mood. I'm going to stay away from her. But I said, if I make eye contact with somebody, I am very friendly. Like I beam with a smile. I'll say something lovely to them. And I said, I would say I am very warm and approachable for sure. If I'm engaging with somebody, if I'm on my own thinking, probably not. But I said, I go out of my way to be kind. And I think, Angie, that's exactly what you were saying is kindness, kindness at the forefront of everything. And, I will definitely, I'll say to somebody, I really love that dress, or I really love your hat, or, you look amazing today.
You even said it to us when we came on.
Well,
I really love your top.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I saw there was an older lady, she must have been in her 70s, and she just looked amazing. Like she'd really made an effort. She looked fantastic. And I just stopped her and I said, can I just say, I said, you look incredible. I said, you look so great. And she was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. But that makes the pieces of our lives. Do you know what I mean? That can make your day or break your day. And I remember years ago when the kids were in swimming lessons somewhere else, there was a lady behind the counter, and she was older, and she was pleasant, but this day she looked really low, and she had the most beautiful piercing green eyes you've ever seen. And when I bought the flapjacks or whatever I was buying for the kids for swimming, I said to her, do you know, I said, I just want to tell you, you have got the prettiest eyes. I said, your eyes are absolutely stunning. And she went, oh my God. She said, I used to be complimented on my eyes all the time. She said, and I thought the other day, nobody ever talks about my eyes anymore.
Oh.
And then luckily that day I just went, you've got amazing eyes. But all of these pieces of our kaleidoscopes, right? And there's sometimes as well, like if I feel that my kids are threatened or I'm threatened, you're going to get a sharp piece of the kaleidoscope, right? I'm going to show up full front. I'm not going to apologize for that. But I do feel that, we're constantly evolving. And I think I've spoken before about Deborah Ford. She has written The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. Unfortunately, she
yes,
has passed.
recommended that.
Yeah,
really?
she's passed since.
Wow.
But and she talks about, and as you were talking about, Angie, accepting every single piece of ourselves, every single piece, every single experience, and I actually discussed with Paul. I don't know whether you managed to see the recording. It was interesting that just Paul and I showed up on that day, because I was going through something pretty big that week, and I was talking it through with Paul, and talking about the struggle and the pieces of yourself, and questioning everything, and trying to figure out who we are amongst big feelings and big experiences. And one of the things that my daughter said to me during that week, because it was a real struggle for me that week, she said, Mum, she said, I know you've been through a lot. And she said, I know it's been really hard and painful, but she said, I'm really glad you did. Otherwise, you wouldn't be the mum that you are now.
Oh,
and I thought, yeah, that's a really good
beautiful
piece.
Thing.
That's a really good piece.
Is that your 9-year-old?
No, that was my 23-year-old. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I thought, wow, that's huge for a 9-year-old to say that, but it is such a beautiful compliment either way. I would like to throw something in there, if that's okay, Cathy.
Of course.
I have this sentence still echoing in my head that Angie said before, and that is, I know why it's echoing, because it triggered something in me, and it is such a reflection of what I want to say to you now. Is actually, I feel I'm saying it to myself. And when you say, maybe the world wasn't ready for me, I feel whenever we feel that or say that to ourselves in our head, it instantly points back to me, was I ready for that version of me, for the world to be seen? And that to me is such a really, really important question, because I've been through many levels in my life, through very different forms of trauma. And I have no idea why it took me, I just want to say until I was today years old, but it was actually a couple of years ago now, 2, 3 years ago, when I sat
Yes.
in Vienna with a really close friend of mine, a New Yorker who lives in Italy, and me, the Austrian who lives in Sydney. We met in Vienna for the first time in person after having a really, really close friendship over the years on, WhatsApp basically and Zoom. And we connected because we were working in the same space. He lost his wife, I lost my husband, and we had very, very similar perspectives, a lot of alignment. We formed this really, really beautiful, deep friendship. And we were sitting there, we are having a conversation, and it had a lot to do with lack of self love on my behalf. This has been a topic for me for many, many years, and it still is a topic today. And he looked at me and he said to me those words where I'm like, how on earth didn't I see that before? He said, people pleasing is a trauma response, Marie. And he said it so eloquently and, like, just as it didn't really mean much. And to me, a whole new chapter opened up. It was like the opening of two really heavy and huge doors to a world that I couldn't
Wow.
believe I hadn't seen before. And I'm like,
Wow.
oh my God. I said, just hold the horses for a moment. Can you just let me process this? This is, and he just
Yes.
looked at me as if like, how didn't you know this? And I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, how did I not know this? Like, how did I not know this? And I've been through so many different forms of trauma from childhood to through loss, but also through my four siblings, who were all adopted. I think I've shared that many times before, and brought different forms of trauma into our family. And, partially in a very active aggressive and partially in a very passive, also aggressive way, where I had to deal with their trauma as well as mine, because then it became part of our family. And I became such a people pleaser, absolute people pleaser, because all I wanted was for them to love me. All I wanted was for the world to love me for who I am. And as I just recently discovered through all my years and decades of self development and working on the topic of self love, is how on earth can the world love me, or anybody for that matter, if I don't even love myself? And if I don't even know who I am, how can I love myself if I don't know who I am? Who am I loving? And I think this is the perfect question that ties in with today's topic. It's like, who who am I? Who do I think I am? And one thing that I wanted to say from the very beginning, but now I'm coming back to it because it feels so suitable to bring that in here. There was a clip circling on social media. I've actually seen it on the same day or within 2 days of each other on three different social media platforms. One, it was sent to me, one I saw it on LinkedIn, and one I saw it on Insta or whatever. And it was that interview, and you might have seen it too, with that young 22-year-old skier. I unfortunately don't know what her name is. If you know, please say it.
Right.
And she was interviewed by this lady named Charlotte. Funny enough, I remember the interviewer's name, but not hers. And she said to her, I just want to preempt this. This is not a rude question, but do you actually think before you answer? And you can see the skier's face as she's like, where's this going? And she said, I'm just so fascinated by the way you eloquently express your thoughts with seemingly not even thinking about the answer beforehand. You just go straight into it. And can you just please take us into your brain? And she did. And part of what she said, and this is why I'm sharing this little story here, touched me so deeply, because she said, I'm only 22 years old, and I'm so blessed to know that I can think to be whoever I want to be. This is part of, the whole self-development work that she has done all her life, that she grew up with, the knowing that you can create who you want to be. And I think that brings everything back for me to the point of, who do you think you are exactly? Who do you think to be, to become who you are? Create that, go into creation mode. And she shared that so beautifully. And I'm like, whenever a message really needs to hit home, I see it 3 times, and I saw that three
That's so
times
funny.
in 1 or 2 days. And then you are asking the exact same question. I'm like, this is so perfect. It is so perfect. And I'm so grateful for everything we shared here today. Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you
not
for
wrapping
all
this
of
up.
that.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I know.
One thing I will
Mm,
say on the point that Marie has made with the people pleasing being a trauma response,
mm,
remembering our nervous systems respond with fight, which is self-explanatory, flight,
mm,
which is running away, freeze, which can be going into depression and hiding under the duvet, right? And fawn
mm,
is the people pleasing. So it's fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and
mm.
fawn is the people
And the
pleasing. So
flop.
that's what Marie's
Yeah.
referring to. But it's
Yeah.
so
Wow.
interesting, and it's interesting
Mm,
as well to own all of the parts of yourself. I'm going to share another story that will probably make you laugh. But
mhm.
the other day, because Angie, I don't know whether you were with us when I was basically scalped by a really terrible hairdresser, and I came back with feathers.
Oh,
And I was so
No.
distraught. I was so distraught. And I waited 8 months to go and have my hair cut. And I went to a new person who's a friend of mine, and she went, "Holy mother of God, what happened to you?" I went, "This is like 8 months growth." And she was like, "Oh my God." And so anyway, now it's finally becoming me again. Like and we had my haircut last week, and she went, "Oh my God, it's so much better." And I said, "Oh my God, yeah, it feels like me again. It's back into a shape and whatever." And anyway, so I talking about owning the pieces of yourself, right? I left a voice message for my team because we're just about to launch a whole new iteration of the Backyard Peace Project. It's very, very close
Wow.
to launch, and we're getting very excited. And I
Wow.
contacted my team, and I just went, "Hey team, I look amazing today. If you want
I love
any
it.
videos done, today's the day." I said the planets are
Oh,
aligned, and they came
awesome.
back
I
and
love
they
it.
just said, they came back and went, "Oh my God, you're so cute." Nobody ever says that. I went, "I'm just saying it." It's like when I clean the house, right? I'm like, "This is a once in a year opportunity. Everybody, come and see the house. Everybody, come. I'll walk you through. It's
Just
never going to
drop
be like
in
this again."
unannounced. Today's the only chance ever.
Such the audacity. Such the
I know.
audacity.
I was listening in the mornings. I put YouTube on the television in the kitchen, and I play these motivational speeches of multiple different people. Some it might be Denzel Washington, or it might be a combination of him and somebody else, and it's all of these motivational things. And I was listening one of these days, and the kids are going, "Oh my God, is this on again?" I'm like, "It will do you good. It will go into your subconscious." And I said, "It will make you really, really successful." And so they've just accepted it now. Taya just sits eating a Weet-Bix roll in her eyes. But anyway, and I was listening
While it's
to
rolling into
Matthew.
her subconscious.
Absolutely, I'm doing them a service. Matthew McConaughey was saying that someone had said to you, "You're so full of yourself." And his reply was, "Who else do you want me to be full of?" And I thought that's so
Love
true.
that.
Like, if we can't be
I
full of
love that.
ourselves, like,
What a
who
compliment.
are we supposed to be full of? Do you know what I mean?
Well, thank
So
you.
I think, yes, thank you so much for noticing. Actually, that's so great. Oh
Oh, I love
dear.
that.
Well, look, we're coming up on the hour, so I'm very respectful of everybody's time. So I've really enjoyed this conversation. I love
Same.
now for us to think
Mm.
about us being as a kaleidoscope, beautiful, different pieces come to the front at different times. And I just think we just have that as the whole beautiful pattern, and embrace it and love it and celebrate it.
Thank
Can
you,
I
ladies,
say
for
that
everything you shared. Thank you.
thank you to both of you, and I'm truly grateful that both of you have become parts of my kaleidoscope.
Oh,
I love that.
likewise, Angie. I really mean it. Thank you
I
so
do
much.
think that they're very
Mm.
sparkly parts. I would think you'll find when you
I'm
look more
very
into the
inspired by
pattern,
your pink
it'll be
today.
very sparkly. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
All
Love you.
right,
Love you
guys.
both.
Love
Love
you
Thank
too,
you.
you.
Angie. Thanks for being here. Thanks,
Blessed to be here.
everybody. Angie, can you just hold on before you leave? That would be great. I won't close off
Yes,
the
okay.
meeting just yet. And everybody for joining us. Things will be starting to look a little bit different in the Backyard Peace Project, so keep an eye on what we're doing. We're going to be doing a big launch very soon, and I think you'll be excited about what we're going to provide for you. So we're very, very excited. It has actually been a year in the making. We've been working really, really
Wow.
hard behind the scenes, and we've learned a lot. And what we're doing is pretty phenomenal. So make sure that you watch this space and so that you can be part of it. Okay, guys, thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.